The day my uncle's will was read should have been about gratitude and goodbye. Instead, the parents who once sold me for $15,000 walked in, smiling like family. They had no idea what my uncle left behind, or what his lawyer was about to play. I'd never thought of courtrooms as theaters, but the day my uncle's will was read, the air felt charged like opening night. The oak-paneled conference room in downtown Chicago smelled of coffee, paper, and tension. Sunlight caught the brass plaque on the door. Whitaker & Co. Estate Law. Inside, I clutched my Uncle Henry's watch as if its ticking could steady me. He'd been my anchor for as long as I could remember. Now, without him, the room felt too big and my own heartbeat too loud. Caleb Whitaker, my uncle's longtime attorney, offered a chair at the head of the table. "You're the principal beneficiary, Ella," he said gently, his eyes kind but professional. The words principal beneficiary landed like stones. I still hadn't processed Henry's death, let alone what it meant to handle his business empire. The door opened, and my past walked in wearing expensive shoes. My mother and father, Diane and Carl, the people who had signed away their parental rights when I was 12 in exchange for a quick payout, swept into the room like they owned it. Diane's perfume hit me first, cloying and familiar. Carl gave a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sweetheart," he said, spreading his arms as though we'd been close all along. "We're still your family. You must be so lost without Henry." The bile rose in my throat. Family. The word tasted like rust coming from him. For years, they hadn't sent a card, a call, not even a text when I graduated college. And now here they were, seats already reserved by Caleb's assistant. My palms went damp. "Why are you here?" I asked flatly. "To support you," Diane said, her voice sugary but brittle. "And to make sure Henry's wishes are respected." I glanced at Caleb. His expression didn't change, but a tiny nod told me he'd anticipated this ambush. He slid a thick folder across the polished wood. "Let's begin." As he read the formal preamble of the will, my parents' eyes flicked between each other, their smiles tightening with every clause. The estate was larger than even I had imagined. $18 million in liquid assets. The Lake Michigan house, the controlling stake in Henry's design company. My stomach nodded. I'd never cared about the money, but the scale of it explained their sudden concern. Carl leaned forward. Henry was generous, but surely he wanted us to be involved in decisions. "We're her parents." The word hung in the air. Parents. My hands trembled under the table, but Caleb's voice was steady. "All will provisions are clear. There are also additional documents Mr. Thomas prepared for this eventuality." For the first time that day, I saw something flicker in my father's eyes. Uncertainty. My mother's fingers tightened on her handbag. They had come expecting to charm, to guilt, maybe to intimidate. They had no idea what was waiting in Caleb's briefcase. Caleb cleared his throat and set aside the will. The air in the room thickened, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. He reached into his leather briefcase and drew out a slim black tablet, sliding it across the table so it faced my parents. "Mr. Thomas," he said, using my uncle's surname for formality. Anticipated that certain parties might attempt to insert themselves into Ms. Thomas's affairs upon his passing. He instructed me to share this material at the reading. Diane's hand fluttered to her necklace. "Material?" she repeated, voice sharp now. Caleb tapped the screen. A recorded conversation from 12 years ago. My heart thudded against my ribs. I'd known Henry was careful, but I didn't expect this. The tablet glowed to life. Henry's voice filled the room. Warm, steady, unmistakable. "This is Henry Thomas," it began. "Today, I'm meeting with Carl and Diane Reynolds regarding custody of Ella. For legal clarity, this conversation is being recorded with their knowledge." I looked at my parents. Diane's face drained of color. Carl's jaw tightened. The audio continued. Carl's voice, younger but unmistakably smug, said, "We're prepared to sign over guardianship, but we need to know the number, Henry." "Number?" Carl. 13,000. That should cover our debts and give us a clean start. She's your problem after that." Diane chimed in on the recording, her tone icy and transactional. It's not like we're abandoning her. You can give her a better life. We're just making a practical choice." Henry's recorded voice went quiet for a moment, then, "I'm stunned. This is your daughter, Carl, laughing softly on the recording. You'll take better care of her than we could. Let's not be sentimental." The audio clicked off. The silence in the room was deafening. I stared at my parents, the memory of that day rushing back, the way Henry had scooped me up from my bedroom, telling me I was coming to live with him, while my parents stood in the doorway not meeting my eyes. Diane broke first. That's out of context," she stammered. "We were desperate. We didn't mean—" Carl cut her off, his voice low. "This was supposed to be sealed." Caleb's tone stayed neutral, but his words were knives. "Mr. Thomas placed a certified copy with the Cook County Probate Court. It's part of the estate file. Nothing is sealed." My hands were trembling, but not from fear this time. From clarity. Years of therapy, of trying to reconcile why my parents had vanished from my life, boiled down to one digital recording. Carl tried a new tack, leaning toward me. "Ella, we were young. We made mistakes, but we're still your parents. This inheritance—" I cut him off, my voice steadier than I felt. "This inheritance isn't yours. You sold me. You made a deal, and Henry kept the receipts." His eyes flashed with something between rage and shame. "We were under pressure," he said, but the words sounded hollow. Diane reached for my hand across the table. "Sweetheart, we just want to be a family again. This money—" I pulled my hand back before she could touch me. "It's not about the money. It's about the truth." Caleb glanced at me. "There's more," he said softly. He turned back to my parents. "Mr. Thomas also left a letter to be read aloud." He unfolded a single page on heavy stationery. Henry's handwriting was bold and deliberate. Caleb read, "To Carl and Diane Reynolds. I loved my niece enough to do what you would not. I raised her, protected her, and prepared her for a life of integrity. If you come here hoping for a share of my estate, you will receive nothing. Your choices are documented. Do not approach her for money. She owes you nothing. Henry Thomas." Diane let out a strangled sound. Carl slammed his palm on the table. "This is outrageous. We have rights." Caleb didn't flinch. "You waived your parental rights. The estate owes you nothing." I took a deep breath. For years I'd fantasized about confronting them, about asking why. Now the question felt irrelevant. They had answered it themselves in Henry's recording. Carl rose to his feet. "This isn't over," he snapped, but the edge in his voice had dulled. He looked smaller somehow, as if the weight of his own choices had finally landed. Diane stood too, clutching her handbag like a life preserver. "Please, Ella," she whispered. "We're still your family." I stared at them, feeling the last ties fray and snap. "Family takes more than a bloodline," I said. "Henry taught me that." They hesitated at the doorway, then left without another word. The click of the latch echoed like a gavel. Caleb turned to me. "You handled that well." "I don't feel like I did," I admitted, my throat tight. "You did," he said. "Henry wanted you to know the truth so you could start clean. He believed in you." I looked down at the folder again. Shares, deeds, accounts. The life Henry had built and left in my care. A life that, despite everything he'd prepared me to handle, the storm had broken. All that remained was deciding what to do with the clear sky Henry had left me. The courthouse lobby felt strangely quiet after the will reading. Through the tall windows the Chicago winter light poured in, pale and cold, but inside I felt warm for the first time all day. For years I'd pictured a showdown with my parents ending in screaming, maybe even forgiveness. Instead, it ended with silence and a door clicking shut. Caleb walked beside me, carrying the leather case with Henry's papers. "You're free of them now," he said simply. Free. The word landed with more weight than the inheritance. Henry had raised me to think independently, to stand on my own feet. He'd also left behind a blueprint of investments, contacts, and notes for a community foundation he'd dreamed of starting. The money wasn't just cash, it was a plan. At a cafe near the courthouse, I opened Henry's handwritten ledger. In the margin, he'd scrawled, "When the truth finally reaches her, Tell her this is seed money, not hush money. She owes nobody." I wiped at my eyes and laughed. Seed money. Henry knew me better than anyone. He'd watched me pitch business ideas at local startup weekends, build a small tutoring app in college, hustle side jobs. He'd seen a spark my parents had never bothered to look for. Caleb cleared his throat. "Henry also left you the choice about what to do with the recording," he said. "You can file it publicly or leave it sealed. He wanted you to decide whether to shame them or simply move on." For a moment, I imagined uploading the audio, letting the world hear exactly how Carl and Diane had bartered away their child. The thought felt satisfying, and then empty. Public revenge would just keep me tied to them. "I'm done with them," I said quietly. "I'll keep it filed but not posted." "I don't need a spectacle," Lib nodded. "That's exactly what Henry predicted you'd say." Back in my apartment, the one Henry had quietly purchased for me as a safety net, I sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor and spread out the deeds, account statements, and letters. My entire adult life had been a series of small, careful steps forward. Suddenly, the staircase opened wide. I drafted an email to my mentor at the tech incubator, attaching Henry's notes. Subject line: "Ready to launch." For the first time since his death, I felt him beside me, urging me to move from survival to creation. The next morning, I woke before dawn and walked along the frozen river. The skyline glittered, cranes swinging, new buildings rising. My parents had chosen a quick payout. Henry had chosen patience. Because of that, I could now build something that might last. I breathed in the cold air, my mind clear. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was a beginning. 6 months later, the marble lobby of the newly renovated Riverside Innovation Hub hummed with quiet anticipation. Reporters adjusted their cameras, young founders clutched pitch decks, and a banner hung over the stage, Henry Whitman Foundation, launching futures. I stood just off stage with Caleb, smoothing the lapel of my blazer. My name was printed on every program as executive director. The seed money Henry had left me had become the engine of a startup incubator focused on kids who, like me, had been written off by their families or communities. "Remember to breathe," Caleb murmured, handing me the microphone. When I stepped up to the podium, a low murmur filled the hall. Flashbulbs popped. In the front row sat venture capitalists, city officials, and dozens of teenagers from the pilot program. But there were also two faces I hadn't expected. Carl and Diane, my parents, sitting stiffly at the edge of the audience. I had sent them a formal invitation, not as an olive branch but as a signal. I'm not hiding. They had declined at first. Now, seeing them here, I realized they couldn't resist watching the child they'd once sold take center stage. "Good afternoon," I began, voice steady. 6 months ago, I was simply Henry Whitman's goddaughter. Today, thanks to his belief and generosity, we launch a foundation to help young entrepreneurs build their futures with dignity. Applause rose. My parents shifted uncomfortably. I continued. For years, I was told that my ideas were worthless, that a quick payoff was better than patience. Henry taught me differently. He invested in people, not just profit. As I spoke, images of the first incubator cohort flashed on a screen behind me. Students with prototypes, single parents pitching apps, veterans turning hobbies into businesses. This was the true revenge. Not humiliation, but creation. After the ceremony, while reporters swirled around us, Carl approached, his tie crooked. "We're proud of you," he said, voice small. Diane clutched her purse. I looked at them calmly. "I hope you'll volunteer," I replied. "We're always looking for mentors who can teach by example." They blinked, unsure whether it was an invitation or a boundary. In truth, it was both. I had no interest in revenge-scorched earth. I was rewriting the power dynamic on my own terms. Later, on the rooftop garden, the skyline burned gold in the setting sun. I exhaled a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Henry's ledger sat in my bag, a silent witness. This was my life now. Building, mentoring, investing. Not waiting for apologies that would never come, but living proof that dignity can grow out of betrayal. The best revenge wasn't a recording or a courtroom scene. It was standing here, microphone in hand, running a program that would outlast all of us. I turned toward the crowd below, full of possibility. "Let's get to work," I whispered and walked back into the light.